This episode of The Old Man and the Three is presented by BMW, the brand that is constantly raising standards for performance and innovation. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Welcome to The Old Man and the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 236. We've got Trey Murphy for an extended interview. We talk a ton of playoff stuff with him. And we also have a special mini playoff mailbag for you, Tommy. Just some incredible games last night. RJ and I covered the Knicks Game 5 and the Nuggets Game 5. But for our DraftKings Sportsbook segment, I do want to talk about Game 6 tonight in Minnesota. Before we do all the normal stuff we do on a podcast, I just want to acknowledge and thank, of course, BMW for sponsoring these episodes. But I also want to acknowledge these hoodies are incredible.
Hoodies are sick.
They're incredible. They sent me 3. I've got a black one. I've got the yellow one, which you guys have seen. This blue one happens to be my favorite. They're just comfy. They're soft. They're not, by the way,
they're really cool.
They don't want me to talk about the merch, but I'm talking about the merch. They didn't ask me to talk about the merch, but the hoodies are awesome.
It's funny. We've had a lot of great sponsors, partners over the years doing the show. I would say these sweatshirts have gotten the most attention. It's literally like half the YouTube comments are not about basketball. It's like, why are you wearing that crazy cool BMW sweatshirt?
I love it. All right. Real quick, before we get to Trey Murphy and the mailbag, I want to do a quick DraftKings Sportsbook segment. So we all, and we talked about it, we did a big preview of this series, the Nuggets and T-Wolves, and felt like this potentially could be a landmine for the Nuggets. We went through all the reasons why, and games 1 and 2 happened. And I think a lot of people wrote off the Denver Nuggets, by the way, including the odds makers, because we went through the odds, and they dropped from the favorites to win the title to like 5th or 6th overnight after game 2. Now those odds have shifted, by the way, because Denver now has the second best odds to win the NBA championship. Boston, the odds on favorite at -130, Denver at +275. It feels like, and I want to get your just perspective as like a fan of the game, somebody who watches a ton of basketball, loves the sport, but it just feels like something that Michael Malone said, and he took it from Rudy T, who was coaching the Houston Rockets back in '95. They were down 3-1 in a series to Phoenix, and they came back and won. And Rudy was just like, you can't underestimate the heart of a champion. My point as a player, because I lived through it and I got close. You couldn't underestimate the heart of a champion in Pau Gasol. You couldn't underestimate the heart of a champion in Derek Fisher or Kobe Bryant, right? And what I think we've seen is certainly the strategic adjustments they've made, which we have talked about on the show. But to get through and live it, the pressure each round building, the intensity each round building, all that is required to get through each round of the playoffs and eventually become champion, which again, I haven't experienced. You can never underestimate that. The lived experience of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., Christian Brown, who's been great the last 2 games.
Yeah.
Michael Malone. KCP, of course. Yeah.
Champion.
Great game last night in Game 5. Like, you cannot underestimate this. And so there's always the strategic stuff. We're seeing this too with the Knicks. Like, it's just what is in someone's heart and brain and spirit. Like, we're seeing it real. I'm not saying they're going to win Game 6. Yeah. I'm saying you cannot count them out.
It's like the institutional toughness.
Yeah.
It's like, they're going to, and I think that we knew this. We talked about this before Game 5 at MSG. It's like, we know Jalen Brunson has that. Yeah. Like you may beat him. They may be hurt. His foot may be screwed up, but like, he has that toughness. You know that this Denver team has that toughness. I think I wanted to ask about Gordon in particular. I know you've talked about on 3 Things, and we've talked about on the show in general, some of the adjustments with him bringing the ball up and just all of the different things he brings to the table. But is there a part of you with him and how he's played in this series so far I think you called him one of your biggest Alfreds last year. Like this is not a new statement that Aaron Gordon is a huge part of what the Denver Nuggets are, this championship run that they had last year and what they could have another one this year. But is there something you've seen in this particular series with him that's even surprised you? Because I feel like after game 2, we'll get to Joker and last night and how unbelievable it was. But after game 2, he's been the revelation.
The word RJ used this morning, because we're recording this Wednesday, right after our live reactions to both game 5s, Knicks and Pacers and Nuggets and Wolves. The word RJ used is unique. And I think there's a bunch of ways to sort of break down the uniqueness of Aaron Gordon. The first and the thing that jumps out the most is someone who probably wanted to be a 1A. And certainly Orlando at times, depending on who the coach was, because he played for a few different coaches in Orlando, at times was given the opportunity to show that he could be the 1A. So this was a guy who worked on his game in a particular way. Then he comes to the Nuggets and has to play a different way. And it's unique also in the sense that he bought into that, that he embraced that. It's unique that he's someone who took ownership after 2022 against the Warriors. And he said, I've got to become a smarter player. In order to win at the highest level, I've got to become a smarter player. I've got to study more film. I've got to recognize patterns, all of that stuff. I said it at the time back in 2022. I was like, you watch that series and you're like, yeah, the Nuggets were shorthanded, but the Warriors in some ways outsmarted them. You can't say that about the Nuggets as a team now.
Yep.
You cannot say that about this team.
Yeah.
And that to me is like the uniqueness. Then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, the guy worked on his game. He's clearly has a bag. And you're like, all right, go be the ball handler. Because that's what's required to give us a better chance to win. And it's interesting because you've seen now, okay, Minnesota has countered. They're like, all right, we're going to put Jaden on him. We're going to hound him. But all of this has essentially allowed Denver to manipulate matchups and manipulate where Gobert is on the floor. All right, I'm going to space. I'm going to shoot threes. All right, Gobert's off me. Now I can manipulate the dunker spot. Okay, they're doubling. Now I can duck in. Like, it's all this stuff. And to me, it's part of what makes watching players in the NBA for years. It's what makes it fun to see these different iterations of players, to see growth in players. And that's why I love watching Aaron Gordon, because it's like, I didn't know that this would be Aaron Gordon at this stage in his career when he's drafted as a lottery pick in Orlando, right? There were so many different paths that he could have been at this stage in his career. And this is who he is. And it's so impactful on winning. And it's awesome.
His consistency. He shot 39% from 3 every playoff series since he's been in Denver. He's a rock for them. Yeah, we know it defensively, but he's a rock for them. I wanted to ask about the heart of the champion thing. I was thinking about this watching last night about Christian Braun, who's obviously great for them in the first half. I'm not comparing him to Jalen or Josh but like there's a part of me when you talk about, I was like thinking about this ahead of the draft this year when you're talking about winners and guys that won in college. And basically Christian Braun has won at every level of his life. He won in high school, won a national championship at Kansas, and then he comes in and wins right away in Denver. Is this a coincidence that these guys are doing this? And it's just like, because it feels like there's something when you're looking, especially like, take the top 5 picks out of it. When you're looking in like the, 10 to 25 range, being like, okay, this guy hit. Dante is another example of this. Dante won a national championship game at Villanova, not DiVincenzo.
Yeah. Draymond didn't win. I don't think he won a national championship at Michigan State, but he won a lot of games.
Yeah.
He won a lot of games. He played for a coach that knew what winning was. He played for a coach that knew what a winning culture was. Yeah, this stuff matters, Tommy, for sure. For sure. And it's also, I'll say this, and Christian's like a perfect example of this, because he's not someone who stepped in as a rookie and was asked to be the second or third option. He was coming off the bench. He had his ups and downs. He had ups and downs this year. Michael Malone has talked about this. He's never been afraid of the moment. So for him to all of a sudden play really meaningful minutes in the finals against the Miami Heat and have the games. Like, it shouldn't come as a surprise, right? He's been in a ton of these moments.
It's funny. It's just it's with everyone's talking about the Nova Knicks and everything like that. It shouldn't be surprising.
Yeah.
Like, these guys have played in huge games their entire life. So this is just a different iteration of it, basically.
Yeah. We covered, RJ and I did in the live reaction. We covered a ton on Nikola Jokic. I think I'm most interested in Game 6, and I don't. This is not a prediction. It's not what I would do. I'm not saying any of that. I just, as a general, just like fan, I'm most interested to see how they guard Nikola Jokic, the coverage on him. There was a lot last night of single coverage with Gobert, where Jokic just said, I'm going to go score. This is a conversation that we have. This is a conversation I have with coaches in pregame meetings. This is a conversation I have with friends around the NBA. It's like, what's the best way? We talked about it on the show. What's the best way to guard the Nuggets? What is the best way to guard Nikola Jokic? And I'm not sure there's a great answer. But within a playoff series, you can't give the same thing to everybody. And they haven't. They've mixed it up. So I think the thing I'm watching the most is all right, what are we going to do with Jokic? What are we going to do with Jokic in Game 6? By the way, Game 6, we'll wrap this up. Game 6, Minnesota's actually on DraftKings Sportsbook. They are the favorites as of right now. The line is 2.5. They're giving away 2.5 points to the Denver Nuggets. So I'm fascinated by this game. A potential Game 7. A potential Game 7 on Sunday.
I'm rooting for 2 Game 7s.
All right. This has been our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. The NBA playoffs are heating up, and so is the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. That's code JJ for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Let's get to our mini playoff mailbag. Tommy, let's start with this one because we have talked a little bit on both shows about the Cavs Boston series, but we haven't covered it in depth. And I want to sort of revisit something we've talked about in the past. And I think it's important to sort of contextualize, right, the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Jack at the Cavs, Jack, your opinion on the Cavs core four: Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen after 2 seasons. They lost a lot of their season together this year. Look, I think there certainly was a lack of continuity because and JB Bickerstaff, I thought, has done a really good job this year of adjusting on the fly, right? Mobley out for a while, Garland out for a while. They went to essentially a spread offense, heavy shooting lineups. Jared Allen had a monster stretch in the season, started out the playoffs with a monster stretch. I think it's hard to judge a team that hasn't had continuity. And certainly when you're missing a guy who's made an all-star team in Jared Allen, that really hurts. But I will say long-term, if this core group sticks together, if Donovan Mitchell ends up signing an extension, the 2 pieces I would say, because I love them individually and I love them together. The biggest point, and I said this on the broadcast in Game 7, is if this is long-term and this is playoff math that we get to at some point, it's Evan Mobley, and he started doing it this year. He's got to become a 3-point shooter. Evan Mobley doesn't have to be the number 1 option. Yeah. Right. And I think the pieces sort of all fit together. I think the one thing that at times is we saw this, I think in Game 4, is Garland can struggle at times when Mitchell's in go mode. Mitchell's out for Game 4 and Garland looks amazing. Darius Garland's a fantastic player. It's that dynamic and Evan Mobley's shooting. Those are the 2 things.
Well, here's my sort of broad question off of this, and I feel like this probably applies to the Atlanta Hawks as well. In the modern NBA, if you consider both just the financial implications of, the second April and like that, but also just the way successful teams are built in the modern NBA, does it make sense to have two great guards like this in general? Because I think there's no debate that both Donovan...
Are you trying to do a segment here on where Donovan Mitchell should go next?
No, because by the way, Donovan might stay. I'm just saying. I'm saying. It feels like one of them will be somewhere else. I have no idea which one, and I don't. And I think until this series plays out, it is what it is. But I think this is the same conversation in Atlanta. It's like there's no denial how good both these guys are, but does it make sense when you're building a team to have two guards like this?
It's a good question. I will say, I do think you need multiple ball handlers, particularly in the playoffs. We discussed this with Legs. I think one of the trends we've seen, particularly in the Knicks Pacers series, and particularly in Timberwolves Denver, is you need multiple ball handlers because in the playoffs you're going to face full court pressure. And for a primary ball handler to just get pickup point at 80 feet, 70 feet every single time down the floor and then have to initiate and create offense in the half court, I think that's hard to do. So having another ball handler on the floor is great. And if you look at the Cavs, you got Max Strus, you got Okoro, LeVert obviously off the bench can give you that, but they just don't have anyone else. So I don't think it's like a curse that they have these two guys together. I don't think that at all. Certainly, there's the target hunting at times for both these guys. I think they face Garland probably a little bit more, but that's not going to go away if he's on his own team. So and they have Mobley and Jared Allen on the back line. Okoro's had a fantastic season and had some really good games in the playoffs. So it's kind of hard to figure out, but until the dynamic and Evan Mobley shooting and continuity, like those are the things to me. It's not necessarily the pairing itself on the surface.
Yeah, and it is hard. I mean, Allen's been hurt, in this series. It's hard to judge this team. It's hard to judge a team when they haven't been on the court together.
Mike Benelli at the Benelli asks a great question. The most important Alfred so far this season.
Options.
There's so many options, and a lot of these guys, made my first annual All Alfred team, the Derek White All Stars. Derek White, of course, no longer eligible. He's been immortalized, and his jersey hangs in the rafters.
I was gonna say he's gone.
He's graduated. His eligibility for the All Alfred team is up. I wouldn't say there's been a most important player. I would say this playoffs, like nearly every playoffs, has proven the importance of the entire thesis around the Alfred, right? We've seen in Indiana, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell. We've seen in New York with Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein. DiVincenzo, of course. Like, these are like guys who are not all-stars. They likely will never be a 1A, a 2A. DiVincenzo at times this year has been a 2A or a 3A, and it's the first time in his career, and he's had a career year. So, like, Aaron Gordon, right? Aaron Gordon, KCP, Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, you go across the board, I don't think there's a most important. I think the whole thing with the Alfred is every team needs the Alfred.
Yeah.
If you want to win, you got to have the role guys that just buy into it and start in that role.
Would you throw PJ Washington onto this list?
That's a great example. Yeah. PJ Washington. Casey Wallace as a rookie.
Yeah.
He's been awesome for OKC.
When you're defining a playoff Alfred, do you have to do it for the entire series? Or is it like, oh, this guy just swung a game?
No, I don't think you have to do it for the entire
series. So you can just be like, okay, this guy won us game 5.
I've brought it up twice on a broadcast with Mike and Doris. One was in the regular season. We were just having some fun, and I explained the whole premise of the Alfred. But in game 7, I told them before the game, I said, this is a series where, like, we've had these wild swings. We've had teams at times that can't score the basketball. It feels like it's going to be a game where at times, neither team's going to be able to score the basketball. Mitchell, of course, had a monster second half. Banchero had a monster first half. It's like, who's the Alfred that's going to swing this game? Okay. Karis LeVert in the first half for the Cavs. Max Strus in the third quarter. Like, those are starring Alfred roles. Those are Michael Caine in Batman. That is Michael Caine, right?
That is extremely high
John
praise.
David Washington
in
Tenet at the private men's club for lunch and giving him instructions. Like that to me is like, that's the sort of in-game definition of an Alfred.
You just mentioned him and you talked about it with RJ this morning, but at what point does the Hartenstein stuff just become, I was at the game last night.
Yeah.
12 offensive rebounds. By the end of the game, it was just like the Pacers just giving up. They're like, no, this guy's going to go get the opportunity. We just have to hope they miss the second shot. At what point does this become almost comical at his ability to do this by himself?
It's funny. I think when a guy does this for so long, like not for a week or not for 2 weeks, it eventually just becomes, okay, this is who this guy is, right? I think Josh Hart, right, has done this for years. Like, this is who Josh Hart is. This is who Isaiah Hartenstein is. And it's funny, been thinking a lot, because I've called these Knicks games, and I was thinking about when he was with the Clippers and mostly coming off the bench, but would spot start here and there. And it's like, I remember thinking to myself when watching him, I'm like, yeah, that guy, I think he's still really young. I'm like, at the time I was like, that guy can be a really good player, but I don't know what he is. Right. And with this team, it's like the perfect role, right? We've seen his value in that high post elbow area as a passer when they get into their cutting and off ball stuff. We've seen his impact throughout this season, particularly after January 1, in terms of rim protection defensively. And then on the offensive glass, he's just every single time. And it's funny if you watch, when you watch the games, the level of attention to detail. Indiana boxing him out is like a fun thing to watch. And yet he still comes up with the basketball. It's not like they're not like, it's not like he got 12 offensive rebounds and they didn't put a body on any of them.
No,
they're putting a body on him.
Last night reminded me of the Cavs first round series last year, where you're just like, he's going to do it. Him and Robinson are going to do it, and they just do it anyways.
Pick one team that did not make the postseason this year that you think will next year, and pick one team that made the postseason this year but won't make it next year. I don't want to do the second part of that. I think the obvious one here is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
That's the obvious one. You assume Ja Morant will be healthy and be Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane. Like they have three guys on their roster that can go and that are really good and that they all fit together. I think the big question mark with them will be the center position, and I would expect this to be a really interesting draft, free agency, trade season this summer. So this is probably a summer mailbag question, to be honest with you.
After we see where people land,
because I do think the obvious one right now to me is Memphis. And the other point I want to make on this, and it goes a little bit to the second point, is like the league is so deep right now with talent and with good teams. There's certainly some really bad teams at the bottom. I'm not saying there's not bad teams at the bottom. There's bad teams at the bottom. I don't think you can take anything for granted in this league anymore.
Yeah.
OKC, they didn't make the playoffs last year, and now they're a number one seed, and they're 2 games away from getting to the Western Conference Finals. So is next year's team the Houston Rockets that makes that jump? But there's a chance the Houston Rockets regress. Like, that's just how good the league is.
Here's the question off of when I read this earlier today, I was thinking about Memphis as well. And if you're playing and you're thinking about, your future, you're thinking of your free agent this summer, your free agent next summer, whatever it is. At what point, we've talked about this all year on the show, at what point if you're playing in the Western Conference, do you start to say, I'm going East because this conference is so fucking good? Where you look at Memphis is going to be better. Yeah. San Antonio is going to be better. Houston, I think, is like we would assume is probably going to improve with all those great young guys. Do you start saying like, I'm just going East because I want to make the playoffs?
certainly, I think it's certainly a part of the calculus, but I will also say, and this goes back to, we can talk about this now because I don't know if it's in the mailbag or not. It's like the Celtics can't win in any way, shape, or form in discourse. They're gonna, let's say they make the NBA Finals and they lose. It's the same old thing. Let's say they win the NBA Finals. It's they had a weak run, blah blah blah, and it's like, oh God. But on that point, the reality is the Eastern Conference this year is not as deep as the Western Conference, I think, in terms of good basketball teams. But at the top, a lot of injuries. It's all, by the way, Kristaps Porzingis is hurt. One of your best players is hurt. And the guy who I've called a cheat code and the difference maker between this year's team and last year's team. So, Miami, bunch of injuries. Philly, of course, a bunch of injuries. Milwaukee in the playoffs, a bunch of injuries. I would expect the East with a healthy season, the top teams are going to be really good. Cleveland, we just talked about it. A bunch of injuries. Pacers are going to be better next year. I would expect there's so much, whether they win this series or not, there's so much, they're going to go into this next season with momentum. Yeah. Right. Assuming they get Siakam back, but it's like that all that stuff is, man, it's hard for me to listen to some things without the context, right? It's hard for me. And so, yes, the West is a better conference, but the East also, the best teams were, through regular season and playoffs, had to deal with an inordinate amount of injuries.
Yeah, I can promise you no one's trying to play a healthy Knicks team next year.
Yeah.
No one's trying to play a Knicks team right now. No one's certainly trying to play a healthy Knicks team next year.
The NBA playoffs are heating up, and so is the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down. I'll have my eyes, of course, on tonight's game 6 in Minnesota. As of right now, Minnesota, the favorites to win this game. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. That's code JJ for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Judas Maximus, can the Wolves win in Denver this next game and the Celtics having the easiest path to the finals ever? Are the Knicks' injuries Tibbs' fault, or is he getting blamed for in-game incidents? I forgot about that one. One thing I'll say is, Barkley went off on this the other day about Tibbs, and of course the reaction to that was, oh, you can't complain about load management and then get mad when guys play heavy minutes. And then I saw some graphics of Charles Barkley's minutes per game in the playoffs. Look, I just want to say, the possessions are down this year, especially in the in the playoffs. I mean, and Barkley played in a different era, and the game was played differently. And I think it was, I'm not going to say it was easier because it was a different game. But you go watch the Pacers play. What is required on a given possession? So you're going to crash the offensive glass if you're the New York Knicks. The Pacers want to beat you, war of attrition, by sprinting the ball up the court, either with a speed dribble or an advance pass. So you've got to recover, get back in position, get matched up, and then the Pacers just start humming in the half court with movement. So you're guarding 3, 4, 5 actions, closeouts, rotations every single time. That's hard to do. And by the way, this is not me saying, yes, Tibbs at fault. I'm saying that's hard to do for any team. That's hard to do. And that is not just indicative of this series. That's how a lot of teams play. And I think that's harder to do. It's harder to play big minutes now. It's harder. It's why what the Knicks are doing is so remarkable. And no, there's an easier path. There's no easy path ever. You have to win the game. Like, are we not going to acknowledge that Donovan Mitchell's awesome?
Yeah.
Are we not going to acknowledge that? Like, I get Jimmy was out and I get Allen's out. Like, I get that. Like, they got lucky in the sense that some of the team's best players were hurt. I get that. Like, but that's almost like what? It's almost every year now.
Yeah.
It's almost every year.
I thought it was great. You and RJ shouted out Alec Burks today. But just, he's a pro. He's played in a lot of big games. He's not going to forget how to shoot, but also just being ready for this pace. Like just when you haven't, like he hasn't really played in like 2 months, and just being able to have your body prepared for what you're describing when you basically are going from not playing at all to you're in a 6-man rotation and you're playing, I don't know, you played 25 minutes last night or something like that, just out of necessity.
I saw this one when Nicole sent these yesterday. Jordan Marvel at Jordan Marvel. Best playoff arena environments you've been able to broadcast in. It's a great question. And I think it's probably there's a strong correlation to the best playoff arena environments I've been able to play in. The Garden is awesome. TD Garden is awesome. I remember during the 2021 season when I was hurt and we played the Clippers in the playoffs, I was like, damn, Dallas has a great crowd. It was very interesting, though. I didn't think the crowd in Game 4 was very good, at least on the I wasn't calling the game, but on the broadcast. But then I of course called 3 games in the Clippers series, and the crowd was fantastic. So Dallas has a great crowd. I played in Oklahoma City. Haven't broadcast a playoff game in there. They always have a great crowd. Philly, of course, which I've done games there. And then the one for me this weekend was awesome. Like I called 2 games in Indy. That place was awesome.
The place is loud.
You were there too.
Place is loud.
It's awesome.
We've talked about this before, but I forget the answer.
Oh, and I got one more. I haven't broadcast a game there, but I played there. Portland, when they're good, that place is rocking. Yeah.
Do you have an example, a playoff example of a game you were in on either side where you feel like the crowd swung the game? I have one of yours, but I want to see if you agree with this after you answer this.
Okay. Man, I've called so many playoff games. I just want to say one that I've called, and that's I've called so many. Game 3 or 4 in Dallas, when Paul George went ballistic in the first half. Norman Powell goes ballistic. They get up 30-something.
Come back.
And we were talking about this during the breaks, and Mike Breen gave a bang in the first half and we laid out, which means you shut up and you don't talk and you let the viewer hear what's going on in the arena. Like you immersive, right? We laid out in a 20-point game. Like it was a 20-point game in the second quarter. They had come back. They'd cut it from 31 to like 20 points, and we laid out. That crowd never gave up. And look, I think the energy, body language, all that stuff matters in a game. We always talk about the Doc Rivers thing, like you're in a tug of war, don't let go of the rope. And there's a time when you can let go of the rope and you're sort of like giving in to the time and the score, and the crowd didn't allow Dallas to do that.
And you haven't done a game there yet this year, but we talked about this with Trey. OKC, I mean, that crowd is insane. They've been insane since the history.
I'm trying to think a game from my career. Man, I don't know. Did you have one, you said?
Yeah. From my perspective, just being in the arena, it was the Philly series, Philly-Boston series, game 2, where you were hot at the beginning, and you guys got up big, and Terry Rozier basically like brought them back. I think you guys were up like 15 or 17 points in the first half, and they went on a crazy run at the end of the first half, and I think they cut it to like 2 or 3 by halftime. and it felt like, obviously all respect to those guys for doing it, but it felt like the crowd willed them back into the game. It basically felt like the crowd understood this run was happening. And it was the first time I'd been there where I was like, oh yeah, these fans are fucking legit.
Why'd you have to bring that up?
I want to see if you were going to bring it up or not. You know what I'm talking about though, right?
Yeah, that's a great example actually. And it's a great example, Tommy. Fucking guy. I hit a jumper. Because
you played great. You played great in the game, and they just can't. And they just willed him back in.
I hit a jumper in front of our bench. I caught it in the left corner, and there was a closeout, and I did a sort of sidestep, one dribble, and I hit it, and I had a toe on the line. So I think it was like 51-31 when I hit it, or 53-31 after I hit it, and I just was like, we're gonna win this game. We're gonna win this series. And then 8 minutes later, we go into halftime.
It was like up 2.
Fuck.
It was literally, and it was like a 17-0 run. And
Greg Monroe came in, got a couple buckets. Like, that's a great example. Boston crowd. Shout out Boston.
Yeah,
crowd.
you're gonna you'll be there.
We're gonna wrap with this one. MVNY Heath asks, this is from Instagram. Has PJ Washington become a better third option than Tim Hardaway Jr. for the Mavs? Love you, JJ. Thank you.
All caps.
All caps. Love you, JJ. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Look, I think as it relates to Tim Hardaway Jr., he has sort of a clearly defined role as this pop of scoring, shooting, aggression off of the bench. So I don't necessarily view him as like a third option. And what PJ has brought and what Gafford has brought and Lively as well is like a defensive fit, and Derek Jones Jr. of course as well, Josh Green off the bench. Like what essentially was created to me was an identity for the team. Beyond just, hey, we have Luka and Kyrie and we can score the basketball. I always tell the story, but Jason Kidd, first game of the season, Wembanyama's debut, I asked him about some defensive questions, and he said to me, well, I'm not really sure about our defense, but we're pretty comfortable if we're in a 120, 125 game that we have Luka and Kyrie. And that paradigm has sort of been flipped. Like, you still have Luka and Kyrie, and you still have two guys that can get you buckets in the clutch and create and play make, but now they have an identity built on defense. And as it relates to a third option, I don't necessarily view PJ Washington as like the traditional third option. Like they're not necessarily going to like, oh, this is his time where we're going to run offense. Like, I was a third option in Clippers. First quarter, start of the third, I'm going to get offense. I'm going to get calls. We're going to run 2-man action with Blake. We're going to run me off picks. Like, that to me is like more of like a third option. PJ Washington is a great option to have because of the way Dallas plays, which is heavy ISO. Luka and Kyrie, ball in their hand, get 2 on the ball, play out of that. And he's been massive in these playoffs.
Yeah.
On both ends of the floor. They're not in this position without making this trade.
51% from 3, 22 points per game in the series, 5 attempts from 3.
Yeah,
but it is.
You know what I'm saying?
But to your point, he's hitting shots.
This is not me knocking PJ Washington at all. I'm saying this is the way Dallas plays, and it's a little different than how I would describe like the third option, which is like, all right, we got our 2 guys, late game. This is our sets. We're going to run through them. Start of the second quarter. We got offense on the court with our third option. We're going to run through him, or like, hey, the first option and the third option, they play 2-man together. It's not that to me.
You have 2
he's a byproduct on this team. This is not a knock on PJ Washington. Again, on this team, he's a byproduct of playing with Luka and Kyrie and how Dallas plays.
You have 2 transcendent talents. Everyone else needs to fit around those talents, and he's just doing a great job of doing that fit.
He's been phenomenal. Yep. Loved PJ Washington, and I love his competitiveness. He's fucking awesome. All right, this has been our mini playoff mailbag. Thanks for sending the questions as always. We actually, I love doing these mailbags. Let's get to our conversation with New Orleans Pelicans star Trey Murphy.
I actually can't believe that we're all wearing matching hats right now. It's nice.
I think we look nice right now.
Can you explain the backstory of these hats?
So I want to do something with fashion, and I didn't really want to do clothes because I feel like it's a lot of work to do clothes. But I started wearing hats when I cut my hair, and I was like, what if I do hats? I feel like it's a little different. Guys do clothes all the time, so I'm gonna try to do hats. And I decided to make like a little friends and family hat. So
Limited edition.
Yeah.
Tommy ended up with 42.
Yeah.
I got 84 for the birth year.
Yeah, kind of old. I was
Traded.
You're surprised? Surprised I'm turning 40 in a month.
I looked up his age and I was like, oh damn, 84. That was a long time ago.
JJ has a lot of birthday trips planned. He has like at least 4.
You know what's funny though? Where I was talking with Chelsea today. So technically I got a 4th trip, but it's like a day. Pinehurst #2, the week after the U.S. Open.
Those are very good ones.
It's in between game 6 and 7. So I'm just going to be there for a day. But the trip I was supposed to take right after the season, it's like 8 days. And I may either shrink it or just get away with it, get rid of it entirely because I am so exhausted from travel right now. Like the idea of like getting done with the NBA finals and then getting on an airplane 5 days later for 8 days. Nah.
Wow, almost sounds like an NBA schedule. Not like you played or anything like that. But
dude, we were saying this last week. What's crazy is like 3 different podcasts broadcasting every weekend going up into the finals. It's like it's like the schedule is like nonstop.
I don't have the exact number because obviously we don't know how many games are going to be played in conference finals and finals.
Correct.
I'm going to be somewhere between 40 and 50 games this year. That's an NBA road schedule.
Yeah. That is a lot, actually.
Road schedule.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Did not realize this is what I was taking on when I retired, but all good. All good. We're going to do the draft in a little bit, but we want to have a basketball catch-up first because we always enjoy those. Oklahoma City Thunder beat Dallas last night in Game 1. They swept you guys.
All right.
I have a question about them in a very broad way. I want to get into some specific things, but in a broad way, they feel like and they felt like a very dynamic team on both sides of the ball. And by dynamic, I mean they certainly have an identity with the way they drive the basketball and space you, but it seems like with their rotation and the way they can manipulate matchups on both ends of the floor, it feels like they're like in game. It feels like a constant riddle to solve with them. Do you feel like that's accurate?
No, absolutely. I mean, they made adjustments through each game. I mean, even within the game. Shai, first of all, he's top 3 in MVP voting. That's by itself. That's just you have a guy like that that's that dynamic and able to get to the rim. It's tough to guard that. Now you have to pack the paint a little bit, try to stop him, and he's kicking out the shooters. And all the guys, they fit really well. It's like a really well-organized puzzle piece. And then with Chet, he opened it up for them because when you have a 5 that can pick and pop, that drags your, like when you're trying to protect the rim, your big is down the floor. Yep. So now you're getting into rotations. And so they've really done a good job of just putting pieces around Shai that just fit really well. And then Dagnall, he's been doing a great job. So.
I mean, even early in the game yesterday, I think it was the start of the second quarter. Shai got a matchup he wanted in sort of the right slot, high quadrant, and there was a switch, and Jalen Williams was opposite him in sort of the left high quadrant, and his man just complete sellout to help. Right, he's just like stationed at the nail, and it's just a quick swing, and Jalen Williams hit the 3.
Yeah.
Next possession, they close out to Jalen Williams. He steps into a 17-footer, gets the roll. Like he's the 9th or 10th guy on that team, right? Yeah. And that's the point with them is like they fit. Cason Wallace last night, Aaron Wiggins last night. All their guys just fit into everything they do. And that's why I say like the most interesting thing to me is the way they're able to make adjustments within a game to rotations, to matchups, to style of play, defensive coverage, whatever it may be. And I think it's established now if it's not. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this guy. And I know you're the same age and you're competitors, but we have been singing Jalen Williams praises for a long time, going back to the end of last season. It feels like he's a star, like a true bona fide star.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem singing his praise because he's one of the better guys in the league. He's a real good dude. And we've, become a lot closer. I'm not going to say we're close, but we've come closer as the years. I mean, I told him at the beginning of the year, I was like, you're going to be very good, bro. I could see. I was like, you could be very good in this league. You'll make a lot of money. And, he just, all he cares about is basketball, man. That's really it. He just wants to hoop and, fashion too, but mainly basketball.
All of you guys. It's
yeah.
a different generation.
Y'all couldn't dress back in the day, but no, Jalen Williams, he's been a problem. He's been a problem, and like he's that second guy for them because every team you need at least like two guys, and Jalen Williams is stepping into that role to be that second guy for them. And he's just such a physical driver already in year 2. Like it's crazy to think like this is his second year in the league, and he's just like so mature with his game. Like he's made a lot of strides, playmaking wise too. Him and Chet have a lot of synergy. And it's funny. I saw him in our draft workout with the Pelicans, and this was early on, like even before the combine. And this is when he was projected to be like a second-round pick. And I was watching him, and I was just like, I don't see second round, like, at all. Like, he just moves different, puts the ball in the basket, long, good athlete. I'm just like, are y'all sure this is like a second-round workout? Like, you sure he's supposed to be here right now? And then combine came, and he just blew up. And so I was just happy to see that he's, really, getting into that groove right now.
What are you supposed to do with the step back when you're defending him?
It's all about tendencies. For him, when he's going left, that's when he's more dynamic for sure. You just have to make sure you're sending him right. Obviously they're basketball players. NBA basketball players is that too. So like sending him right isn't always the answer. And, but trying to just make it tough. That's really it.
Just your overall thoughts, even post All-Star break, now in the playoffs, playing in it, watching it, the physicality that is occurring right now on a nightly basis. I'm all for it. I want to be clear on that. I think what is frustrating as like a viewer sometimes is a level of inconsistency crew to crew, a level of inconsistency sometimes within a game. Mm-hmm. Tom Haberstroh wrote an article. Apparently the word marginal is nowhere near in the rule book, and now we're interpreting all these things all of a sudden as being marginal, a marginal contact.
Oh, I hear it all
the
the time.
Jalen Brunson call in game 1 where he got the block on Miles Turner and clearly
was that
just threw his body into him prior to him knocking the ball, right? And they reversed it. Like it's stuff like that I'm like, let us play. It's fine. But I just, the consistency, was there any points throughout post All-Star break or the playoffs where you felt like a level of frustration? I'm not trying to get you fined here. I'm not. I'm trying to understand like it seemed like from viewing and calling games and being courtside for games, there was a drastic difference night to night.
It's funny you say that because around April, that's when everybody starts like kicking it up, like physicality wise. And I remember even game 1, I'm talking to Tony, like there was one play a guy drove and I put 2 hands on him, but I was like, and they called the foul and I was like, Tony, it's the playoffs. Come on now, we're not calling that no more. Like it's like you understand like the time and situation, like it's time to be more physical. Like there's some things you're gonna let go of. And that's why for me, when I came back my sophomore year after playing in the playoffs my rookie year, I was like, this is just so much more different. Like you play in the playoffs and then play regular season, you can't touch anybody regular season. But then playoffs come around, forearm shivering people, like going through the lane, like anything goes almost. But then it just depends on who it is though. I will say that. Obviously, some guys are going to get more calls than others. And people complain about it, but some of the guys, they've earned that. Like it is what it is. You've earned that. I'm not going to say right, but earn that respect where a referee is going to give you a little more leeway and they're not going to let people touch you as much.
I think that goes both ways, right? Mm-hmm. It goes for offensive players, obviously. Mm-hmm. Certain players who've established themselves, if you knock them off their path, they're going to get that call most of the time, right?
Absolutely.
I think it goes both ways with defensive players who have a reputation.
Sometimes, because we have one on our team who has, I think, is the best defender in the league.
Sure,
but
you felt like he had a tight whistle?
Very.
Interesting.
Very. And it's like,
Is that age? Is that just he hasn't been around long enough?
I mean,
maybe because he doesn't have the antics.
no, he doesn't have the antics at all. He's not a very talkative person.
Just too quiet.
He's not very. He all he cares.
We're talking about
Herb
Herb Jones, by the way.
Herbert Keyshawn Jones to be exact as well. But he's. I guess. I mean, age could play a part into it, but like, if you're watching night in, night out, you don't think that he is a young guy. Like, he does not play defense like he is in his third year. It's just not even close. Even his rookie year when he was playing defense, like, you would think he's a vet. Just close out, just being smart. Like, that's the reason why our defense was so good, was because of Herb Jones.
What do you think makes Dort so tough?
I mean, he's 6'5", 240. Like, he's built like a fire hydrant, and he's very agile, great hands, screen navigation, very elite. Like, I'm going to screen him, and he's hitting me and, like, getting around me, and I'm just like, you just can't screen him. And so I think that's the biggest thing for him. He just puts a lot of effort into the defensive end, and he really, like, locks into that.
Speaking of physicality, Minnesota up 2-0 as of this recording against Denver. And there's been a lot of talk about, in some ways, like a generational defense, right? Certainly, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, as spacing has really taken over, as three-point shooting has taken over across the league, I feel like they defend, and they've figured out sort of a formula for guarding today's NBA offenses, right? What does it feel like to play them? Like, what is different about playing the Minnesota Timberwolves defense?
Well, for me this year, I played against them one time due to injury. But in that one time, though, it was very difficult to score. I will tell you that. And that's regular season early in the year when they're probably not as locked in. But if you're just watching the game, like, they have Rudy roaming. They have Cat, who's been playing a lot better defense on, the bigs, especially like against Denver. They just put Cat on Jokic and just, hopefully he just doesn't foul. But when he's not fouling, or like staying out of foul trouble, guarding Jokic, and you have Rudy roaming, and you have Jaden McDaniels, who is arguably one of the best defenders, Anthony Edwards, another two-way star, and then Nikhil, when he comes off the bench, who's been playing phenomenal defense. Like, it's hard to score on that. And they make it tough every single possession. So, like, any little daylight you have, it's almost like, all right, I have to shoot this. Or if it's like, it might not even be a great shot, but it's like, I've been getting all these tough looks. It's been physical the entire time. Like, I got to take a shot. And so, like, it plays with your mental a little bit because they've been so good, so locked in defensively.
Yeah, there's something about you used the word synergy earlier. There's something about the synergy in personnel with them.
Absolutely.
Where on the wing, they have more than capable individual defenders. And on the backside, they have size across the board with Reed, Towns, Kyle Anderson, and then they have Gobert.
Yeah.
So it's like, I liken it to like when we played our best defensive teams, which we had a bunch of them in Orlando, we had Dwight. We didn't necessarily have great wing defenders, but we had a top 5 defense nearly every year.
Correct.
They have great wing defenders, and they have a Dwight on the backside. Yeah, so exactly. I think that's ultimately like why it's so tough. Not just schemes and stuff, but it is personnel. Like, Tim Conley has built that team really well,
Not very well,
just in terms of building a defensive juggernaut.
And no, like when you first saw that team and you like Cat at the 4, Rudy at the 5, it's like, is that really gonna work? Like, you've seen Rudy in the playoffs with Utah, and like he gets play off the court. But if you really think about it, what wing defenders did they have other than Royce?
Yeah.
Like, if people are getting straight line driven, like, it's not many people that, like, you can't save everybody. And so now it's just like Ant, Jaden McDaniels, and Nikhil. First of all, it's hard to get past them in the first place. And when you do, now it's Rudy. It's like, all right, congrats. This is the prize for you getting past me, is Rudy Gobert at the rim.
Yeah.
Enjoy that.
This is a general question that I just kind of thought of. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, because when we think of great individual defenders on the wing, we almost always picture someone guarding Kobe Bryant or someone guarding a Kevin Durant in isolation, or someone guarding LeBron in isolation. To me, maybe the most underrated thing about any great perimeter defender is simply screen navigation.
Absolutely.
That to me is, and that's where I think a Lou Dort, a Derek White,
Jay McDaniels,
and Alex Caruso, and the Minnesota guys. That's
all
what,
of them, really.
and Herb's in that category
Absolutely.
too. There's several guys, but that to me is like the most underrated thing that people just don't talk about enough.
I mean, that's today's offense. There's so many screens. There's so many different actions. Like, and also there's so many moving screens too. Like Gobert is screening and he has a big knee brace on, and like you try to run through that, like you're gonna be in pain. So like you have to find ways to navigate through that, because 48 minutes of that is rough. I'll tell you from firsthand experience, it's not fun.
Oh yeah, I played against the Jazz.
Yeah.
I played against the Jazz. Come on,
I think he had 2 knee braces there. So it was both sides. So no, that's tough.
How much of screen navigation do you think is instinctual versus just film and learning it?
I've become a lot better defensively, so I think I can answer this a little bit now. But I think it's more so experience, if I'm being honest with you, because when I first got to the league, I was getting killed on screens, and then also you just got to understand, like, 1, who you're guarding, and then 2, like, you got to press up into the ball. Like, if you're just gonna stay back on the ball, then you're gonna get screened by everybody. It's just how it is in the NBA. So I think experience is the biggest thing. Just seeing those reps, getting those pictures. Because you can watch as much film as you want to, but if you don't implement it to the game, like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, there's a learned experience from all this stuff in the NBA. I would add that I see more and more with the best defenders, coaches giving them freedom to navigate. And by that, because I played for coaches where it was very rule-based. Here's the scouting report. You're going over the top on an off-ball screen. You're chasing. Here's the scouting report. You're going under on a pick and roll. And teams manipulated that. Okay, we're just going to set the screen up higher.
Correct.
Right? We're going to change the angle if we run a backside action, right? And so what I've and I've talked to a few coaches around the league about this, they allow their best defenders the freedom to figure it out on their own. They're not putting a set of rules, hey, you have to chase this guy every single time, or hey, you have to go over the pick every single time. And number one, what it allows it to do is in emergency situations, they can get back, they can recover. And number two, it mixes up for the offensive player his rhythm, right? And then the other part about screen navigation, and there's so many clips that when I'm watching games where I just want to save that clip. Those high pick and rolls, like the really super high, like 40 feet.
Yeah.
There's so many times where the big will come set the screen and he'll clip the guy, like get a piece of the body.
Yeah.
And he doesn't die on the screen. That's the biggest thing. Like there were guys, we play against where like this guy's going to die on the screen. Just screen him. He's going to die.
For sure.
And the best defenders, they just don't die on screens.
No.
They just constant pursuit.
Always. You have to.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, these guys are going to have 40.
But it's also part of like not conceding switches, right?
No, for sure.
So if it's a situation where they're trying to manipulate a matchup and you are setting a screen with a guy that you don't want guarding the ball handler, right? It's on the primary defender to not concede the switch.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's what I think the best guys do.
No, like Herb, he's very good about that as well. Like,
does he talk to you guys like, hey, don't like, unless I fucking emergency have to scream at you, like stay with your guy? Does he tell you that?
He's gotten to that point for sure.
He doesn't talk, does he?
He does. No, he does. No, he does. And I promise you, the best thing ever, I'll be on the ball and all I hear from Herb is, I'm on your left side, send him here. I'm like, all right, bet. Bet. So I'm just like, all right, cool. If you get past me, you got Herb to deal with. So like he gives us confidence in that aspect because he's calling out stuff like he's the Draymond per se, like calling out different actions. He's kicking guys out, sending guys low, man. Like even Larry, he's really good about that as well because there's a lot of times where we got guys that we don't really want in actions because of rotations and also just like if they're the low man, I mean, at the end of the day, like genetics are still a thing that play into a factor. Like if you're 6 foot, you're not going to stop a Rudy Gobert rim run. It just is what it is. And so like Herb is really good about getting actions, peel switching. Like me and him talk a lot. Before the game, like he'll send me clips actually because he watches every game after the game. He'll send me a clip and be like, all right, what'd you see here? And then we'll talk about it. And we'll be like, all right, so if we ever see this again, it can literally just be like one of those actions. So like, let you know, having the right slot, and they swing it to the right, they swing it to the left slot. And basically, since you're in a high shift, most of the time guys boom drive that. They're going to drive really quick to the rim. If that guy in the
boom
corner,
drive.
Okay, that's all right. Sorry about that.
Okay.
That's our terminology.
Like stampede.
Yeah, stampede catch. That's it. If a guy boom drives that, stampede catches that, a lot of times that guy in the high shift isn't going to get back to that.
No shot.
So what we try to do sometimes is the guy in the corner, he'll pick up the drive, and then Herb will run to the corner. And it's part of our principle still because he'll still be sending him baseline because he cannot go middle because Herb is coming from that side. So different stuff like that, little nuances that me and him talk about and try to get a little more synergy on the defensive end. I love that.
Another point I wanted to ask you about was the face of the league, passing of the torch concept. There's a number of generational players that are either didn't make the playoffs or no longer in the playoffs. And it seems like it's been a theme since the All-Star break. It's been a talking point. The project we're working on with Fullwell for the docuseries on, which I know you were part of, for the docuseries on the NBA playoffs. Mm-hmm. When we first met back in October, like Jason and I talked about this, we were like, it feels like this could be potentially the season where we see this passing of the torch, where it's about the next guy. And it sort of happened, right? I mean, Jokic is still in it, and he's,
Mm-hmm.
3-time MVP, but he's not 35. He's not 36, right? Jokic, Tatum, Ant, of course. I mean, you think about the guys that you, besides me, that you grew up just really loving.
I love how you threw yourself into that.
I'm kidding. You go down the list: LeBron, Durant, Curry, PG, Harden, Westbrook. Guys from your generation. Those were your favorite players growing up, right?
Absolutely.
Do you guys talk about who the next face of the league could be? Do you guys talk about this concept of passing the torch?
Absolutely.
You do?
Absolutely. We always talk about it. Like we have a lot of debates in our locker room because we're pretty close in that group and we talk about a range of different things. But basketball-wise, things that we talk about is definitely passing of a torch. And actually, it's crazy. We sat in this seat about a year ago and we talked about Ant. And I promise this isn't a Minnesota Timberwolves podcast right here, but we are talking a lot about them right now. But we really said, like, what is his ceiling? And I said in my head, top 5 player in the league. And right now it's looking like he's one of those top 5 players in the league. Yeah. Is because of what he's doing defensively and also just overall just taking over the game. Like he's looking like one of those guys where it's like, oh, wow, like he's closing games. He's has a ball in his hands, he's making decisions, and he's stopping their guys on the other end. That Phoenix series, he literally took over the series.
In your eyes, as the face of the league, is there anything more than just on-court performance? Is there a marketing angle to it which matters?
Personality means everything. I mean, you see that with Ant. He has a very big personality, and people gravitate towards that. Shai, his personality is a little more stoic, and obviously his market plays a little role into that, but his off the court presence is very huge. So that's when, that brings it's a little different than Ant, but it's similar because they both have big personalities. They just show it in different ways. So, and also they're pretty good at basketball too. So I think that helps a lot.
Wemby?
Yeah, Wemby's different, bro. Nah, he's different.
Winning matters to this.
Absolutely, unless you are Wemby, where it's like he's just different.
Yeah, no. But I'm saying like long term.
Absolutely.
Like the reason LeBron, the reason Steph have been the face of the league for the last 10 to 12 years since Kobe, is because they won. The reason Kobe was because he won.
Absolutely.
The reason Jordan was and Magic, Larry, like they won. Yeah. Like that's important. And I don't necessarily think you have to have Ant's personality.
No.
But
because
you have to be willing to embrace it at some level.
For sure.
Because all those guys, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Steph, they all have different personalities.
Yeah, but it's still an aura around them.
Yes.
like people
They're like,
gravitate
okay,
towards.
I'll take this.
Yeah,
I
for
like
sure.
it.
And it's crazy too, like, sorry to cut you off, Tommy, but it's crazy you were mentioning all those guys. And during that last stretch of the year where we're all fighting for playoff position, I played against every one of those guys. And it's like we're fighting tooth and nail to get into the playoffs. Like, we won 49 games and it was the AFC. Do you understand how crazy that is?
Oh, you know what? Can I actually do a little rant here?
Go ahead.
Can I do a little rant here?
I'll allow it.
Let's go.
All right. There's always these NFL and NBA comparisons. Why the NFL is better? Why more people watch it? Why don't people watch the NBA? Blah, blah, blah. One of the things that I think has come up consistently is the idea of parity, right? And I have said this multiple times throughout the season that this is the best the league has been in terms of overall talent depth and how that depth of talent is spread across the league. And it's reflected, I think, in the number of good teams.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers were like people treating the Lakers, let's say, like a bad basketball team. Or even the Warriors. The Warriors were not a bad basketball team. They were a good basketball team. There's just a lot of good basketball teams, and there's a lot of good players. It keeps coming up that somehow the Denver Nuggets had the worst finals run of all time, and people always talk about the seeds they played. First of all, they're the number one seed, so they had to play the 8 seed. They didn't have a choice there, right?
Really how it's set up.
Okay. Think about last year. Nuggets won, I want to say 53 games.
Something like that. Sounds
Okay.
all right.
Lakers won 43 because the Warriors won 44. In football, if a 12-4 team, I'm using 16 games because I haven't really fully bought into the 17-game idea. But let's say a 12-4 team. This is what we grew up on. 12-4 team plays a 9-7 team and a 10-6 team, right? The difference in win percentage is like 15 to 19%. The difference in win percentage between a 54-win team and a 43-win team is like 12 or 13%. So like we have parity in the league.
Absolutely.
People need to stop fucking paying attention to the seeds. The seeds don't matter. All these teams are good. You have to, nobody plays 82 games anymore. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. So you have to factor all this stuff in. You can't use like, oh, well, in the 90s, this team played this team and this team. Well, guess what? The 8 seed sucked back then.
Terrible.
They sucked.
Terrible. And you haven't even thought about this. Next year's going to be even worse. Memphis is coming back. Spurs are going to.
What do the Spurs do this? I mean,
Spurs are going to do something. Like they're
Rockets.
Rockets, like, that's even more teams in the West that are like going to be good. There's going to be no bad teams.
Yeah, Philadelphia as a 7 seed. Philadelphia as a 7 seed.
They have Joel Embiid.
They have Maxey. They have cap space.
max cap space.
What?
But also to your point about the seeding thing with like the Denver thing, like, okay, it doesn't matter what seed the Lakers are when they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You still have to beat LeBron James and Anthony Davis in a playoff series, and you have to beat them 4 times.
And it's also like, it's not their fault. Like, they're just playing whoever's in front of them. That's not their fault. That if they're injured or like a little bit, like the chemistry isn't there, and that's not their problem.
Yeah.
You still have to put the ball in the basket. I think people underestimate you still have to put the ball in the basket.
Do you think, we've talked about this a good amount, but not living in the moment, but just seeing what Minnesota's doing.
Hold on a second. But real quick, I just want to say one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever says this about an NFL team.
No.
Nobody said there's been wild card teams that have fucking won NFL championships, that have won the Super Bowl, and nobody's like, oh, their run was a fraud. Why?
No, they didn't say about the Chiefs this year.
Well, I just don't understand why.
It was crazy.
Why
That
it's
was
just about the
year.
NBA? Why?
Because it's like, they play so many games.
No, because it all goes back to the fucking GOAT and legacy bullshit.
Yeah.
People would rather talk about that than basketball.
You're really worked up about this one.
He said he was gonna rant.
I see.
He said he was gonna rant.
I see.
Do you think super teams are officially dead?
Dead? I just think it's looked at it in a different way now. I think it's not, okay, we have 4 guys that are all-stars and like really good high-paid players, but like instead it's more so this team is really cohesive. Like, it's a super team because you can't attack anybody on this team. Everybody can score. They can dribble, they can pass, they can shoot. So I think that could be like the newer definition of a super team. Because obviously with the second apron, we've seen, the new CBA rules and the taxes, we've seen it's going to be tough to make like a super team with guys that are making a lot of money and then the rest of the guys not making much money at all.
I think the idea, and again, I'm happy to be wrong on this. I really am. I'm happy to be wrong if the Phoenix Suns go on to win a championship next year with that group and those three guys together. I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong.
I mean,
if the Lakers somehow trade for a third star and they go on to win a championship, I'm happy to be wrong.
I'm still in the West now.
Hold on. I'm saying I'm happy to be wrong. I'm not saying I would be happy if either of those teams won.
Okay.
I'm just saying I'm happy to be wrong.
All right, cool.
I like being wrong. It's fine.
Okay.
My point was going to be on the death of the super team. I would say the idea of building a 3-star, 3 max level team through trades and free agency, that probably is done. If you can build a younger team through the draft and timely trades, that can still exist. Like OKC is going to have 3 max guys in 3 years.
Correct.
They're going to have 3 max guys. Jalen and Chet in 3 years will be on a max contract, and Shai will be on a max contract.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a way to do it. It just, to me, it has to be through the draft, or you have a bunch of young assets, you have future picks, and you trade for that third star that way versus going all in on 3 guys and not being able to build out a competent roster.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to Knicks tonight, game 2. What is there to say about Jalen at this point, about what he's doing?
I can't lie, that's incredible. I'm not, like, I'm a hater at heart, but there's nothing I can hate on about this. Like, this has been incredible. I mean, he scored 4 straight games with 40-plus points. Like, last person to do it was Michael Jordan. I mean, there's not really much else you can say about that. He's doing this at 6'1".
And they have, 7
on
guys?
A good day? Like,
7 guys in the rotation now?
Yeah. I mean, as Tibbs, though.
Yeah.
It's always going to be 7 anyway, but
let's get to the draft.
Let's do it.
Before we begin, we wanted to give a shout out to New Era, the official cap of the NBA. We apologize to New Era. We're not wearing official caps. We're going to make an exception today. And it's only because Trey was nice enough to bring us these one-off custom hats as friends and family. New Era, of course, is now the official headwear of the Old Man of the Three and the NBA. You can support your favorite team by wearing the same caps that the players do, or show off your personal style with exclusive drops. Shop headwear and apparel and get 10% off when you go to neweracap.com. Use code OLDMAN at checkout. That's 10% off your order using promo code OLDMAN. Some exclusions apply, and visit neweracap.com/OM3 if you want to see our favorite caps. All right, Tommy, what is the topic for today?
We are drafting figures from world history you wish you could wear a throwback jersey of.
Okay. Real quick. Who came up with this? You did?
No.
Tommy did. Tommy did. Okay.
I did.
There's always room for interpretation. I just want to point out that these figures, I think in general, do not have throwback jerseys,
Yes.
right? These are non-sports figures.
You can pick a sports figure if you want, but it probably makes more sense to pick a non-sports figure. Real people.
like an old sports figure. Say like
It can be whatever you want. Anyway,
Jackie Robinson.
If you're going to
no, like Larry Nance.
No. Do it. If you're going to Coachella,
You'll lose the draft.
if you're going to Coachella tomorrow, and you got to pick out, you can have a jersey of any person in world history. These are those 5. So it can be a sports person. It can be it just has to be a living person.
I just wanted to do an old Larry Nance joke. That's all.
Do Larry Nance.
I also am
not.
curious about it. Like, we have a winner for every draft.
Yeah.
You know that. Just curious, like, are we measuring this by the overall historical impact of the 5 people, the cool factor?
I think it's open for interpretation.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, how
are you going to make your splash at Coachella with this jersey?
I have a great first pick, but then after that, I might have a play that you can't deny. So
Let's see it. All right, start it up.
So my first pick will be Dr. James Naismith.
Oh,
It's a pretty good one, right?
Are you putting just Naismith, or are you putting Dr. James Naismith on the jersey?
I feel like it has to be a Kansas or, Yeah, I feel like it has to be some type of Kansas jersey. So I think it'd be Kansas jersey and then Naismith. I'm not even going to put the Dr. James on there.
Okay. I like that pick. I'm up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Jesus.
Okay.
Interesting.
That is a pretty good pick.
Interesting.
Just taking that one right now.
Okay.
You know, can't let that go to the second round.
Yeah. I thought about that one, but, you know, I mean, yeah.
Interesting.
I think for some people, I won the draft with that pick.
All right. My first two picks. I'm going to go with Abe Lincoln and Gandhi. Those are my first two.
That's a good one. That is
Yeah. Lincoln is a great first pick.
Yeah.
I was hoping I'd
go with Gandhi. Too.
Chet.
that one.
I mean, just Chet jersey, but
Gandhi's also fire. Gandhi's a great jersey because anytime you get the one word, I got one of those coming up.
Yeah.
for sure. That's tough.
Yeah,
That's tough.
Yeah, that's it. Those are.
It's also interesting because when I was doing this, I was like, man, I would be dope. This guy had like a massive historical impact, but pooh, he's got some skeletons in the closet.
We're not going to say anything. Trey threw a couple out there. We're not going to say right now that. Just like, dude, you haven't signed that contract yet. Come back in August.
I have dark humor, bro.
Come back in August and you can draft them. All right. I'm gonna pick Albert Einstein. That's my second pick.
Okay. It's interesting because I was thinking about Einstein. Certainly had a massive influence, but then I was thinking about the lineage between Einstein and all of the physicists, and then we get to Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project and the outrage around that movie.
I was like, Jay's just gonna pick.
I mean, objectively, it was a great movie, and Christopher Nolan. I'm not making any statements about some of the decisions once they actually built the bomb, but it was a great movie. But the outrage afterwards, I was like, yep. Einstein off the list.
Picking the theory of relativity. What happened after that?
Okay.
I don't know. There's a lot to unpack, but I think that Einstein's resume speaks for itself.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, hey,
You
man.
got to.
All right. So next pick will be Rosa Parks.
Good one.
Yeah, you can't really say it's a bad one.
Yeah, it's a good
You can't say it's a bad one.
And in that similar direction, Malcolm X.
Okay.
No jersey number on there.
Just an X?
No, I was gonna say Malcolm X. Well, you know what? Just X, fists on the back.
Okay.
Black power fist on the back. Yep. This is a play I'm making that you can't really say these are bad picks. So
Yeah, you're being smart right now. We love both those picks. This is great. Just Trey's winning this draft. All right. I have a lot of places I can go with this third pick. I think I'm going to go with Michelangelo.
Oh,
I wanted a one-worder. You went to Florence last year, right? You were nearly.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
The impact and he built modern art. Built Florence.
That's a respectable pick.
And that jersey would go hard with just Michelangelo on the back.
I feel there might be some confusion about the turtle, but I think you probably could have waited on that one. It's
I think
early.
so. Yeah, I could have probably.
I promise you, I wouldn't pick that one.
I could have sat on it, but I wanted to have him. He fits. Talk about team building. He fits into my roster
For sure.
Man.
You have a list right now?
Yeah, I have a list.
That's cheating, but
I always have a list.
So
I've got Lincoln. I've got
that's on
Gandhi.
me. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with two unimpeachable picks. I'm gonna go with Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow, he used my play.
God, just stole your. He has. JJ has Abe Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, and MLK.
He gentrified my play.
I gentrified your play.
You got to give the guy credit, man. He's.
Yep.
Trey is shook right now. Should have had a list.
I got to get next one. I got to
going back to his. All right. I think for the overall impact, you guys might think this is a reach, but I think for the overall impact, I want to have him on my board. I'm going Steve Jobs.
Okay.
Just Jobs on the back. Probably like a green, like Seattle, like a Seattle Storm colored jersey.
So, again, what's after Jobs? You know what I mean?
I mean, the iPhone.
The iPhone, which has
Mhm.
created an entire generation of depressed,
Here we go.
insecure teenagers.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you have to think about these things.
If you want to look at it that way, sure.
Yeah.
But would you have been able to make it to the studio today to tape if it wasn't for the iPhone?
Probably.
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 You could have just used a map.
JJ used to use maps back in the day. Get places.
I did use maps.
That was the time before
All right,
Jobs.
where,
Well,
where am I going? Is this right? All right, cool.
I'm happy with it.
Hey, that's all that matters. You're happy with it, bro.
Yep. All right, Trey, you got two. I got some guesses on who you're gonna pick, but
I
I'm not gonna
promise
step
you, you're
on
not going to guess this next one.
it. Okay.
So my next one will be David Stern.
Wow.
All right. Dude, I was not gonna guess that. so
I
you're
know
cor-
you weren't.
You're correct.
I know you were not. And then my last,
No, that's. Oh, you got 5.
Yeah.
You got 5. Fuck.
my last pick. I'm going to go Spike Lee. Spike Lee, New York Knicks jersey.
Wow.
All right.
I feel like he's been there for a lot of very historical things. So,
Incredible filmmaker.
Yeah,
Love,
as well.
love
Yeah.
Spike. You'll probably see him tonight.
yeah. And last time we played the Knicks, too, I talked a lot to Spike.
It's interesting though. You picked 2 very related to basketball, 1 related. So you picked 3 basketball related ones. I like it.
I'm just gonna say, Trey, you're not gonna win, dude.
Are you sure about that?
Spike Lee's in your top 5 of all time.
Hey,
You're not gonna-
there's some people in there. There's some people in there. There's some people in there. I'm telling you, if you go against that one, it's not going to look good for you.
You're right.
Just
We gotta
saying.
just say no. You gotta say it. You gotta say it.
All right, go against it if you want to.
Okay. There's so many that feel terrible leaving off. But I think just to give it a little bit of a mix for my 5th pick, I'm gonna go with Beethoven.
Okay. We can definitely see the different interests
Yeah.
in
I'm
the
just
drafts.
trying to hit all these different buckets.
No, we see.
Basically to bring everybody together.
I just want to point out. That Tommy picked 4 white dudes and Jesus. I just want to pick that. I just want to point
Jesus,
that out.
though, and Jesus, who's my first pick?
I just want to point that out.
I mean, yes, for sure. I love your first pick. Your other picks
I
might be a little controversial. That's all. There's no diversity in your team right now.
You are right.
And don't just
You're all right. I don't have anything. I have no response.
I would have gone. So I want to name a few that I'm debating about, but I know who I'm going to pick for my 5th. I would have gone with Da Vinci over Michelangelo, particularly in the 3rd round. That seems very high. It's a reach. I also really want to draft as a vanity pick. I think I have a chance to win this, so I'm not going to draft this guy. But for anybody who loves the city of Paris, George Eugene Haussmann, who basically rebuilt the city, wide avenues, parks, squares, the architecture, all that stuff.
That's a Spike Lee-esque pick.
I know. Of course, I could do the real vanity play, which is Christopher Nolan. I could pick a Nolan throwback jersey, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick Thomas Edison, who basically.
That's what you're going to pick last? Another white guy?
That's great value for the 5th round. The incandescent light bulb.
Thomas
It's the
Edison.
practical implementation of the incandescent light bulb.
I already made my choice.
the reason we have this studio.
I like the diversity on your team now.
I already made my choice. I gotta live with it.
I'm scared.
I'm not gonna
scared
lie.
for you, actually.
I'm not gonna lie. JJ has a good team. This is
solid. I mean,
yeah. He did it. He had a smart strategy. He
he copied my play, but it's okay though.
stole your play.
He stole my whole thunder.
Who do you have any people you were gonna draft? I was gonna draft Joan of Arc, but then I didn't know enough about what she actually did. It should be a crazy jersey, but I would have. If you guys had asked me what she did, I wouldn't be able to say.
I feel like an Obama one would be great too, obviously because of his love for basketball. Like, I feel like
Obama would be fire.
Another black person as well. Yeah. So can't really deny that one.
Yep.
Yep.
I love it.
Claiming to be acting under divine guidance, she became a military leader who transcended gender roles and gained recognition as a savior of France.
Shakespeare would have been good.
Yeah.
Shakespeare would have been good, actually.
Shakespeare would have been
That's one of the ones I'm like, okay, I like
Shakespeare
that
would be a sick jersey.
That'd be cool.
This has been the Old Man of the Three New Era Draft. Trey, always fun to catch up, man.
Always.